بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Alhamdulillah, welcome back to another lesson of إعراب. Last lesson we covered in regards to فعل مضارع مرفوع, and we mentioned when would فعل مضارع, the imperfect tense verb, will be experiencing the state of rough. Then we moved on to فعل مضارع منصوب, and then after that we moved on to فعل مضارع مجزوم. Now what you see in front of you is what we covered last week, was all the situations where we would see فعل مضارع will be مجزوم. And we know that from last week that if it comes after lam, lamma, la الناهية, لام الأمر, or كلم المجازات, any of those particles that are used or articles of condition, then it will govern to both فعل مضارع as a jazm. It'll put both fi'l mudaris in the state of majzoom. Okay, so for example here, we have here, in for example, in yantahu yughfar lahum ma qad salaf. So we can see in has governed yantahu and yughfar. So in kalimul mujazat, it governs two fi'l mudaris, which we covered last week. Now moving on, inshallah, we're going to move on to more instances where fi'l mudari can be majzoom, inshallah. Okay. Okay. So here we go. المضارع في جواب الأمر. When the imperfect tense verb comes as a response to amr. Now we know that amr means a command, the imperative verb. For example, اقرأ, read. Sometimes we see that the sentence is just فعل amr or al-amr on its own. There's no follow-up. However, sometimes when we're speaking or sometimes in text, we could see that there's فعل amr, but there's a follow-up to that fi'l amr, and that is known as jawab al-amr. For example, if you look at here, فَاذْكُرُونِي, so remember me. What's the jawab of the amr? أذكركم, I will remember you. So the first one is fi'l amr, remember me. But the jawab of the fi'l amr is أذكركم. So we can see here now that whenever we have amr, we can have the jawab to the amr as well, i.e., which demonstrates the outcome of the imperative verb. So the outcome of remembering me would be azkurkum, I will remember you, or I shall remember you. Does that make sense? You're probably normally used to fi'l amr, but fi'l amr can have a jawab as well. Is that clear now? That fi'l amr can have a jawab. Is that clear? Clear. Okay. So notice here that the fi'l mudari that comes as the jawab of amr, it'll be majzoom. That's the main thing we're talking about here. It'll be majzoom. That's why we're not saying azkurukum, we're saying azkurkum with a sukoon. Okay? Or it could be the jawab of an-nahyu, prohibition. For example, one says, لا تجحد, it's supposed to be a big ha, okay? لا تجحد نعم الله تدم. Okay? Don't deny the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا تجحد نعم الله. Don't deny the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تدم, they shall remain. Okay? So let me just annotate that. Okay, let's just get the right word there. Okay, so لا تجحد. So that's the word we're looking at. Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay. So لا تجحد نعم الله تدوم. Don't reject the bounties of Allah. تدوم, they shall remain. So that's the outcome of not rejecting. One way to make sense of this as well, the jawab amr or jawab nahi, is it, it will make sense using the conditional particle in. So for example, فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, remember me, I shall remember you. In other words, إِن تَذْكُرْنِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ, if you remember me, I shall remember you. So if you add the word in, it kind of keeps the meaning intact. So in other words, إِلَّا تَجْهَدْ نِعَمَ اللَّهِ, if you don't reject the bounties of Allah, tadum, they shall remain. How is فعل مضارع مجزوم playing out here in tadum? Because it's دام يدوم, from bab nasara yansuru, dama yadumu dawaman, like sama yasumu, kana yakunu. So normally the verb is yadumu, but because obviously it's referring back to ni'am, which is feminine, so you're going to say tadumu. But furthermore, we've got rid of the harful illa waw in tadum, and also the mim is sukun, which signifies that it's in the state of jazm. That's how it became tadum. So normally it would be tadumu, but because it's in the state of jazm, okay, that's what we're saying, tadum. Why is it in the state of jazm? Because it's the jawab of an-nahyu. Next, if it's the jawab of istifham. So you're asking a question. Normally when we ask a question, we don't have the follow-up, okay? But if you do have the follow-up to that question, that will be known as jawab al-istifham, and it'll be majzoom. So for example, هل تقرأ الكتاب? Are you going to read the book so you understand it? تفهم هو. So that's the outcome and jawab of the question. Normally you'll see that the sentence is هل تقرأ الكتاب? Are you going to read the book? But then you're saying, in other words, if you read the book, you will understand it. Like we mentioned before, it's valid to put the word in. So in تقرأ الكتاب, if you read the book, تفهموا, you should understand it. But the thing is here, we've actually used it as istifham. So the fi'l mudari that comes as the jawab of istifham will be majzoom. Normally this is tafhamu, fahima yafhamu. Tafhamu, you will understand. But we're reading it tafham, majzoom, because it's the jawab of the istifham. Next, it could be the jawab of arz. Arz is a request. Okay? So for example, ala tazuruni, why don't you visit me? Tajid ma yasurruka, you shall find that which pleases you. So ard is like a kind way of, saying something to someone, and you kind of like want something from someone, but it's in a nice way. You just phrase it with the word ala. So ala tazuruni, why don't you visit me? So this is the ard, and that's signified by using the word ala. Ala tazuruni, like the question and the la, which obviously, why don't you visit me? And what's the outcome? Tajid ma yasurruka. You shall find what pleases you. Okay? So we can see here tajid is fi'l mudari majzoom. Normally it's tajidu. But because it's come on the jawab of ard, it's majzoom. Okay? You got a question here. ما فرق بين فاذكرني أذكركم وفاذكرني فأذكركم. Oh yeah. If you say fazkurni and then you bring fa, then that will be known as fa sababiyya, which we've done last lesson under the mansubat. That in all these situations, if we add a fa, good job you asked this question, so it kind of makes a distinction between fa'il mudari majzoom and fa'il mudari mansoob. In all these situations, if we add a fa, it'll become mansoob, because that fa will be known as fa sababiyya, i.e., the second sentence becomes the cause for the previous. Okay? Sorry, the first sentence will be the cause of the second. Okay, so You remember me, thus I will remember you. فَاذْكُرْنِي فَأَذْكُرَكُمْ. Okay, so the outcome, the sabab, which is I should remember you. Okay, sorry, that's the sabab is you remember me. It'll be the first sentence, and the outcome of that will be أذكركم. فأذكركم. So if you have fa sababiyya, if we add fa into all of these, that fa will be known as fa sababiyya, and the fi'l mudari will be mansoob because it's come after fa sababiyya. And it's not the fa that's governing the fi'l mudari as in the state of nasb, it's actually an, which is assumed to be hidden after fa sababiyya. So let's run these down as if we're using fa sababiyya. That would be fazkuruni fa'azkurakum, because an will be hidden. لا تجحد نعم الله فتدومه. هل تقرأ الكتاب فتفهمه. ألا تزورني فتجد ما يسرك. Is that clear? Is that understood? The difference between when we use fa sababiyya, the fi'l mudari will be mansoob because an will be assumed to be hidden, and when we don't, the fi'l mudari will be majzoom because it'll be the jawab of what's come before, i.e. amr, an-nah, al-istifham, and al-ard. Are there any difference in meanings when using fa? Okay, when you use fa, it's like obviously you're bringing out the cause, sababiyya. Okay, so you're using the fa sababiyya, and in terms of meaning, there is not much of a difference in the meaning, but in terms of governance, yes, there is. Okay, when it's jawab of tamanni, so layta li malan, wish I had wealth. But then there's a jawab of that. What would you do with that wealth? What would that, what's the outcome of that wish? Atasaddaq bihi. I will give charity via it. Okay, atasaddaq bihi. So we can see here that layta li malan atasaddaq bihi, that the tamanni is layta li malan. And on the jawab of the tamanni, atasaddaq, tasaddaqa yatasaddaqu, tasaddaqan means to give in charity. So it normally would have been atasaddaqu, but it's majzoom because it's the jawab of at-tamanni, which is later. Next we have is the jawab of at-taraji, which is hope. There's a difference between at-tamanni and at-taraji. At-tamanni is used in situations which are possible and impossible, both. And because having wealth is something which is possible. So you can say, wish I had wealth. So it's a possibility one may have wealth. But it can be also used for the impossible as well. Later shababa a'idun, wish youth can return, but it can't. Okay, not in this world. So at-tamanni is used for the attainable and unattainable. At-taraji, however, hope, is only used for things which are achievable, attainable, and possible. Okay, لعلك تحسن إلى الفقراء. Hopefully you will be good to the poor. Hopefully you will be good to the destitute. Tanal ajran. What's the outcome? You shall receive reward. You shall obtain reward. Normally it's nala yanalu, tanalu. So the alif has dropped off. Also, there's a jazm, sukoon at the end, tanal. It's experiencing the state of jazm. Why? Because it's the jawab of la'alla, which is at-taraji, which is used for at-taraji, hope. Okay? Next we have is al-mudari'u fi jawab at-tahdid. The imperfect tense verb when it comes as a response to at-tahdid. Now, at-tahdid is when you want to prompt someone. Okay? You want to egg someone on, or you want to prompt someone. You propel someone to do something. So, halla tadrusu, that's supposed to be with the dhamma. So, a bit of a mistake there. Not the right mistake to make when you're delivering an I'rab course, isn't it? Halla tadrusu. Okay? Why don't you study? Tastafid, you shall benefit. So halla is the word used for tahdid, prompting, meaning you should study. Study. Halla tadrus. Why don't you study? In other words, it's saying You're trying to encourage saying study. What's the outcome? تستفيد. You should benefit. Okay? You should receive فائدة. So تستفيد. So we can see here that normally the verb is تستفيد from استفاد يستفيد استفادة باب استفعال. So تستفيد, but you got rid of the ya, and also you've given sukun at the end, and it's become تستفيد. So هلا تدرس, remember this is with the dhamma, تستفيد. Why don't you study? It should prove to be of avail to you. You shall derive benefit. تستفيد. Is there anything that you don't understand on this page here, this slide? Inshallah, a summary will be coming shortly as well to give you a bit of a recap of what we've done in the previous lessons. Alhamdulillah, clear. Okay, so let's move on. Let's get rid of that annotation because it's just in the middle of. Okay. So الفعل المضارع المعرب. Which فعل مضارع is معرب? يفعل, يفعلان, يفعلون, تفعل, تفعلان, تفعل, again, تفعلان, تفعلون, تفعلين, تفعلان, أفعل, and نفعل. All these cases of فعل مضارع you see in front of you are all معرب. They potentially can experience the state of raf, nasb, or jazm. Remember, verbs is jazm, not jar. So يفعل, يفعلان, يفعلون, تفعل, تفعلان, تفعل, تفعلان, تفعلون, تفعلين, تفعلان, أفعل, نفعل. So if we put these in the nasb state, it'll be يفعل. In يفعلان, the noon will drop off. يفعلون, the noon will drop off. So it'll be يفعل. So لن يفعل, لن يفعل, لن يفعلوا, لن تفعل, لن تفعل, لن تفعل, لن تفعل, لن تفعلوا, لن تفعلي, لن تفعل, لن نفعل, لن نفعل. And in the state of jazm, it will have a sukoon in those 5 sighas, which is يفعل, تفعل, تفعل, أفعل, and نفعل. And in all the other remaining ones which have a noon, these noon will be known as noon i'rabi. The noon will drop off. So لم يفعل, لم يفعلوا, لم تفعل, لم تفعل, لم تفعلوا, لم تفعلي, لم تفعل. Carrying on again with الفعل المضارع. Okay, المعرب. What else is معرب from the فعل مضارع? So let's carry on. We also have, okay, لا يفعلان, لا يفعلن, لا تفعلان, لا تفعلن, لا تفعلن, and لا تفعلان. Why are we saying that these are mu'rab? Didn't we read somewhere that if fa'il mudari has lam ta'kid and noon ta'kid, then the fa'il mudari is mabni? No, not all of it is mabni. So if we run down, look at the fa'il mudari, yaf'alu. If we put lam and the noon ta'kid, okay, the only ones that are mabni, which we'll shortly come across, will be yaf'alu, will become la yaf'alanna, taf'alu will become la taf'alanna, taf'alu will become la taf'alanna as well, okay, and af'alu will become la af'alanna, and naf'alu will become la naf'alanna. Okay, now we are left with yaf'alani. When you bring lam ta'kid and noon ta'kid in yaf'alani, it will become la yaf'alani. It will still consider to be mu'rab. And as I explained before as well, it'll be mu'rab with noon al-mahzufa. The noon will be assumed. Okay, it'll be hidden. And if we see, look in the yaf'aluna, it will become la yaf'alunna. Okay, so here the waw will be assumed. Okay, and obviously the noon of yaf'aluna has done it, you've done idgham with that in the noon of ta'keed. So it'll become la yaf'alunna. These ones that we're covering now, they still actually will be considered to be mu'rab. And that goes with taf'alani, la taf'alani. And then taf'aluna, la taf'alunna. And la taf'alina will be la taf'alinna. And in la taf'alinna, we will say that the ya is hidden. In other words, taf'alina, la taf'alinna. The ya will be assumed. It'll be mu'rab with the ya mahzufa. And that's the same thing with here, la taf'alani. Taf'alani, when we lam ta'kid, nun ta'kid, it will be still considered to be mu'rab. Okay? So, all these that we've covered, the fa'il mudari are mu'rab, and when we lam and nun tawkid or ta'kid, you want to call it, then not all of them remain mabni. The ones that remain mabni we shall cover. I've just excluded the mabni ones because we're talking about fa'il mudari mu'rab here. These cases still remain as mu'rab. Okay? Now, كينون الفعل المضارع المبني. Which one of the فعل مضارع is مبني? يفعلنا. That فعل مضارع which has نون النسوة. Also تفعلنا. So يفعلنا, تفعلنا. All those women are doing or going to do. تفعلنا, all you women are doing or going to do. Also لا يفعلن. Notice we said the يفعل, تفعل, تفعل, أفعل, نفعل. When you are lam ta'kid with noon ta'kid, then that becomes mabni. Because normally it's yaf'alu. Now it's become la yaf'alanna. So it'll be mabni, okay, with fath. La yaf'alanna. So la taf'alanna, same thing. La taf'alanna because it could be you, one man definition will do, or that one woman, she will definitely do. Because taf'alu can signify you are doing or she is doing. Then that also is la af'alanna and la naf'alanna. Okay, these five, like you got yaf'alu, taf'alu, taf'alu, af'alu, naf'alu, these are also known as af'al khamsa, the 5 verbs. In fa'il mudari, when we say af'al khamsa, we're referring to yaf'alu, taf'alu, taf'alu, af'alu, and naf'alu. Okay, and then remember, because when you lam ta'kid and noon ta'kid, okay, you can have thaqila, which is noon mushaddad, and you can have noon khafifa, which is noon sakin. So the same, exactly the same ones we can run down as mabni as well. La yaf'alanna, we can also say la yaf'alan, and la taf'alanna we can also run down as la taf'alan, and la taf'alanna again we can run down as la taf'alan. So these are still mabni. La af'alanna will be la af'alan, and la naf'alanna will be la naf'alan. So in these situations, all these situations, the fa'il mudari will be deemed to be mabni. So that is a summary of what we have covered in the previous lessons. So we've covered al-fi'l al-mudari' al-mu'rab, and now we've covered al-fi'l al-mudari' al-mabni as a summary. Moving on, what else did we cover? We covered al-fi'l al-mudari' il-bimarfu' إذا لم يسبقه. You can say يسبق or you can say يسبق, because from سبق يسبق سبقا or سبق يسبق سبقا. So إذا لم يسبقه ناسب أو جازم. The فعل مضارع will be in the rough state when it is not preceded by any harf nasib, any governing agent which puts in the state of nasb, or jazm. So that's pretty straightforward. So يفعل, يقرأ, ينصر, يصد, whichever word, as long as it's got no allan, kay, idan, etc., it will be in the rough state. When would it be in the nasb state? When will the fa'il mudari be mansub? إذا سبقه ناصب. When a governing part, you could say a governing word which governs it to be in the state of nasb, if that comes before the fa'il mudari, then the fa'il mudari will experience the state of nasb. What are the common particles that give fa'il mudari nasb? Allan, kay, idan. It's very easily said. an lan kay idhan. And there is more to it because an is sometimes assumed to be hidden, like hatta, etc., which we will still summarize as well. But just to briefly, we're just covering here. And it'll be experiencing the state of majzoom. Okay, so just a bit of a mistake there. So let me just see if I can correct that. Okay, so we're going to put majzoom there. Okay, majzoom. I'll just put it underneath. I think you'll understand from there. Okay, majzoom, and we can probably just get rid of that. There, okay. So it'll be majzoom إذا سبقه جازم when a حرف جازم comes before it. And those particles that give you a jazm is لام الأمر, so ليفعل, ليقرأ, etc. لا الناهية, so the prohibitive lam, so لا تقرأ. Also لما, and we also had kalimul mujazat, those conditional particles that govern to fail mudari. Okay. Let's carry on further. Okay, so let's just get rid of that annotation there. Okay, so now moving on. الفعل المضارع المنصوب. So we went into a bit more detail. Marfu is pretty straightforward. Mansub, when would the fi'l mudari be deemed to be in the state of nasb? After an, yes? After lan, after kay, which means so that. Lan means never. So lan, asubba, I will never swear. Okay? An means that. Either means therefore. It normally comes as a response to something. For example, someone says, Astaghfirullah tawbatan nasuha. I'm going to seek forgiveness from Allah sincerely. And then someone says, Idhan yaghfirullahu laka. Idhan yaghfirullahu laka. Therefore, Allah will forgive you. So, yaghfira. After lama kay, which comes in the meaning of kay. Okay? After hatta. So, after hatta, the fi'l mudari bi mansub, but after lamakay and hatta, the an will be assumed to be hidden. So the ones from after idhan, anything that's going to be mentioned after that, an is assumed to be what? Hidden. That's why the fi'l mudari will be mansub. So the ones before the an, lan, kay, idhan, nothing is assumed to be hidden. But after idhan, the ones we are covering, so lamakay, the fi'l mudari will be mansub because an will be assumed to be hidden. It'll also be assumed to be hidden after hatta as well. And lamul juhud, that lam which comes for refutation, you're going to refute something. For example, we said وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ. Okay, so lamul juhud, and will be hidden. Also, when the fi'l mudari comes as after a fa, which is in the jawab of amr, like you mentioned before, فَذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. If you add a fa and say فَذْكُرُونِي فَأَذْ, will become mansub, kurakum, and will be assumed to be hidden. After the fa sababiyya, which comes in the jawab of an-nah, prohibition, and after the fa which comes in the jawab of at-tamanni, after the fa which comes in the jawab of at-tarajji, and after the fa which comes in the jawab of istifham, after the fa which comes in the jawab of an-nafyu, just negation. Okay, and after o which comes in the meaning of ila and after o which comes in the meaning of illa an. So it can either come in the meaning of ila an or illa an. And after wawu sarf. Okay? So normally wawu sarf, it translates as what? Hal. So all these situations, you can take a screenshot if you want, are situations where the fi'l mudari will be mansoob. The first four, an, lan, kay, idhan, straightforward, the governing agent is any one of these four. After that, an will be assumed to be what? Hidden in all of these. Okay. Next, الفعل المضارع المجزوم. Okay, so let's just correct that as well. Okay, so let's just get a shape in there that will cover that, inshallah. And we want to put down there الفعل المضارع المجزوم. Okay, very bad planning, isn't it, from me? المجزوم. I'm sure you can find some room to accept my apology. So المجزوم. Okay, so we're doing الفعل المضارع المجزوم. When would فعل مضارع be مجزوم? Okay, so we have, let's get rid of the annotation first. We have فعل مضارع will be مجزوم after لم. Okay, لم يقرأ زيد. Zaid did not read. After لما, after لام النهي, so لا تفعل. After لام الأمر, ليفعل or ليقرأ or ليفتح. After in شرطية, so if you have the particle, the conditional particle in, notice here from here onwards, it would be that they govern two فعل مضارع. If two فعل مضارع are to be found after the conditional particles. However, sometimes فعل ماضي is brought after the conditional particles. Okay, so for example, someone says إن نصرت نصرت. If you help, I will help. Instead of saying إن تنصر أنصر. If you help, I will help. Now, why would someone use the past tense verb for a future event? It can happen, and those things you cover in balagha. Okay, you cover those aspects in balagha. One of the reasons why you can use the past tense, okay, is if there's a good chance and probability of the verb happening, even though you're using the word in, so there's a likelihood that you are going to help. I could say in nasarta, I could bring the past tense verb, which suggests that it's most likely that you're going to do that. It's like as if you've already done it. Instead of saying in tansur, I say in nasarta, and then I say there's a most likelihood I'm going to do that as well. So nasartu, I will help. So I'll say nasartu. So sometimes you see that in the shart, the fa'il mudari is in the shart, the fa'il is fa'il mudari or sometimes fa'il mazi. And in the jaza, the outcome, the fa'il is also can be fa'il mazi or it could be fa'il mudari. So there are, different reasons why the fa'il mazi can be used, and that's one of the reasons is if there's a great chance of the shart taking place, you can bring the past tense verb. Okay. After the conditional particle, mahma. After the conditional particle, isma. So we've done examples for each one with the meanings, so you can refer to that as well. After the conditional particle, haythuma, الشرطية. After the conditional particle, أينما. For example, أينما تكونوا يدرككم الموت. Wherever you may be, death shall get you. Okay. بعد كيفما الشرطية. However. Okay. بعد من شرطية. Okay. فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره. Okay. So we can see يعمل and يرى. Both signify the state of jazm. Or after ما شرطية. Okay. وما تنفقوا من خير تنفقوا. Whatever you spend. ما تنفقوا. You're not saying تنفقون. Okay. After متى الشرطية. Notice some of these can just be used as a question, istifham. For example, someone says, Man anta, who are you? Then it's not conditional. These only come into play when it's used as a shartiyya. Ayyana, okay, when. Anna, okay, is conditional to two fail mudharis, and also the word ayyu. Ayyu or ayya depends how you use it in the sentence. If it's in the rough state, you can say ayyu, and nasb state will be ayya, and jar state will be ayyi. Okay, so all these particles that we've explained will put the fi'l mudari in the state of jazm. G, what's your question? You have a question? That's fine. Lamun nahi. Why is it lamun nahi? Because it's the lam of prohibition. It's a muzaf ilayh construct. Isn't it just la? Yeah, you're right. Okay, it's la and nahiya, they say. Okay, you are right. It's not lam, it's la and nahiya. Okay, um, I'll double check that. Okay, it's la and nahiya, but it could be, I don't know why I put lamun nahi. I'll have to double check that. Okay, well spotted. Okay, but I will double check it. I'll see in the grammar books. Do they actually say? I'll definitely know it's la and nahiya. But now you've brought it to my attention and you said, is it lamun nahi? Okay, do they actually refer to as lamun nahi or is it la and nahiya? Okay, I will check that up. I'll double check it up. Okay, jazakallah for that. Um, any other questions before we move on to the next slide? Okay. You possibly can say lamun nahi, the lam of prohibition, but when you use it la, then you have to bring as nat and nahiyatu, the prohibiting lam. Okay, la, the prohibiting la. So la and nahiya. But I will double check that anyway. Um, let's get moving. Okay. الفعل المضارع. This was supposed to be مجزوم. So there we go. Another typing error as well. Let's just cover that. And let's just put down here مجزوم. So these are places we are covering where the fi'l mudari will be majzoom. Majzoom was quite extensive. Okay. After the jawab of amr. Okay. So fadhkuruni azkurkum. After the jawab of annah. Okay. After the jawab of istifham, which we covered this lesson. So this is a summary of today's lesson as well, you can say. And also when it comes to the jawab of at-tamanni. Layta li malan atasaddaq bihi. How do we put a fa there? It'll become fa sababiyya. Hence, in that situation, an will be assumed. So we will say فَأَتَصَدَّقَ بِهِ. On the jawab of at-taraji and the jawab of ard, which is request, and the jawab of tahdeed. Okay, so alhamdulillah, we have covered fa'il mudari in the state of raf. We've covered fa'il mudari in the state of nasb, and we've also covered fa'il mudari in the state of jazm extensively. And which words exactly are mu'rab? We've gone and run them down from yaf'alu all the way to afalu nafalu. Which fa'il mudari is mabni? We've gone through each and every single word in terms of when you put lam ta'kid and noon ta'kid. It's not always mabni. There are certain cases where it will still be considered to be mu'rab. We've gone through those as well. Okay. So where are we in terms of the bigger picture? So let's get rid of the annotation. Okay. So we have covered fa'il mudari. This is a cycle of diacritical analysis for fa'il mudari. We're doing the same thing for ism mu'rab. We're doing the same thing for fa'il mudari. Because when we inshallah go through the i'rab in the surahs of the Quran, we'll go through systematically. So we'll go through step 1 all the way to step 5, and then we'll have the outcome of the i'rab. So this whole cycle will play out inshallah when we practice the i'rab in the chapters of the Quran. So al-mabni, we've done fa'il mudari will be mabni, we've done when it's mu'rab, we've done the grammatical states, so it's raf, nasb, and jazm. So okay, so I do apologize for that one. So let's just get rid of jar because in fi'l mudari you don't have the jazm state, isn't it? Okay. There, okay. Jar state, sorry. So we've done fi'l mudari when it's in the state of raf. We've done it when it's in the state of nasb. We've also done fi'l mudari when it experiences the state of jazm. We've also done wajhul i'rab. Why does it experience that state? It's pretty straightforward. If there's no huruf nasiba and or huruf jazma before it, it'll experience the state of raf. If there's huruf nasiba before it, or and which is assumed to be hidden after fa sabbiya and hatta and lamul juhud, etc., then it'll be mansub. And if huruf jazma comes before it, it'll experience the state of jazm. Or if it's the jawab of those words which we covered before, amr, al-nahyu, al-istifham, al-tahdid, al-tamanni, and al-taraji. So that was the wajh al-i'rab part. Alamatul i'rab. What is going to be the sign of the i'rab of the fi'l mudari in those states? That's what we will cover inshallah. Now, we're going to move on to alamatul i'rab. Okay. More or less, you've kind of have worked out what the i'rab, a sign of the i'rab will be. But we will still go over it. Okay, so let's go through this inshallah together. علامة رفع الفعل المضارع. The sign of the rough state of the fi'l mudari. الضمة الظاهرة. So you'll see an apparent dhamma. And that will signify that the fi'l mudari is experiencing the state of rough. When would that be? إذا كان الفعل المضارع صحيح الآخر. When the fi'l mudari is sound in ending. What do you mean by sound in ending? When it don't have any huruf illa at the end. So yarzuqu, there's no alif waw ya. It'll be ad-dhammatul muqaddara. The sign of the fi'l mudari being in the rough state can be a hidden dhamma, so you don't see on the surface, but it'll be assumed. When would it be assumed? إذا كان الفعل المضارع معتل الآخر بالألف. When the fi'l mudari is, it contains a harf illa at the end, and more specifically an alif. For example, yas'a, sa'a, yas'a. So when you say the word yas'a, for example, let's say yas'a Zaydun, Zayd is trying. So yas'a is in the rough state, but there's no dhamma. We'll assume the dhamma to be there, because originally it was yas'ayu, but because obviously of the morphological rules, it became yas'a. Okay, and also when the fi'l mudari is mu'tal al-akhir bil ya, when it has harf illa ya at the end as well. Okay, so hamiya yahma, so yahma, so it's got ya at the end. So in that situation, the dhamma will be assumed. Also, when would the dhamma be assumed? إذا كان الفعل المضارع معتل الآخر بالواو. When the fi'l mudari has harf illa at the end, but more specifically a waw. For example, ya'lu, ala ya'lu. So we could see ya'lu, it was ya'lu, but because of the morphological rules, it became ya'lu. So in these three situations, the dhamma will be assumed. Provided there's no huruf nasiba jazima, it will be experienced in the state of raf, but the dhamma will be assumed. Thubut al-noon is also a sign of a word, the fi'l mudari being in the state of raf. When would this be? إذا كان الفعل المضارع من الأفعال الخمسة. Okay, when the fi'l mudari is from the af'al khamsa. Sorry, here, I think before I did mention, okay, yaktubuna, there's 5 situations you will see. So, yaktubu, yaktubani, yaktubuna. So it's got noon i'rabi. Then you carry that on, taktubu, taktubani, noon again, noon i'rabi. Then yaktubna, the noon is noon niswa, that's not going to change. Okay, then you have taktubu, taktubani, again another noon. Then you got taktubuna, another noon. Okay, then you got taktubina, another noon. And then you got taktubani, another noon there as well. Okay, and then you got taktubna. Taktubani, you merge that as one case. So When the fi'l mudari is from those 5 sighas that have noon i'rabi at the end, and the noon i'rabi is there, the keeping of the noon, okay, will be known as, will be the sign of the fi'l mudari being in the state of raf. Because we know that if you put lam before yaktubuna, it will be lam yaktubu. And if you put lan before it, the noon i'rabi will drop off. So these, in a nutshell, this is the sign of fi'l mudari being in the state of raf. Next, we have is alamatu nasb al-fi'l al-mudari. The sign of the fi'l mudari being in the state of nasb. Al-fathatu zahira. So you'll see an apparent fatha. Okay? So this will be when the fi'l mudari is sound in ending. Lan nu'mina. So amana yu'minu. Nu'minu, but we can see that there's no harf illa at the end. Okay? It's a noon. So it'll be al-fatha al-zahira. Lan nu'mina. Also, when is fi'l mudari ends with a ya at the end. It's harful illa ya, like ata ya'ti. We can still give it a fatha, but in the rough state, we couldn't, okay? But in the rough state, nasb state, we can, the fatha can be apparent. So, an ya'tiya. Also, when it's fi'l mudari mu'tal al-akhir bil wawi, lan nad'uwa. Remember, in the rough state, the dhamma was assumed, because when we say nad'u, but in the nasb state, the fatha will be apparent. So from the harf illa, with the ya and the waw, the fatha will be apparent. So fi'l mudari, one of the signs of it being in the state of nasb, will be actually fatha will be zahira in these 3 instances. It'll be muqaddara in just the one, when it's mu'tal al-akhir bil alif, when it ends with an alif, like lan tarda, ولن ترضى عنك اليهود ولا النصارى حتى تتبع ملتهم. Okay, so we can see here tarda, the fatha is assumed, because originally was radiya yardayu, lan tardaya, but the fatha is what assumed. So al fatha al muqaddara will be when it's mu'tal al akhir bil alif. And also the sign of it being in the state of nasb will be that when you see fi'l mudari has noon i'rabi, and the noon i'rab will potentially has a noon i'rabi, but it's been omitted, it could be because it's experiencing the state of nasb. So we can see here, lan tanalu al-birra hatta tunfiqu. So lan tanalu, you shall never attain righteousness until you spend that from that which you love. So lan tanalu. So we can see that the noon i'rabi has dropped off. Okay. What's the sign of fi'l mudari being in the jazm state? So the normal sign we see is a sukoon. Which kind of fi'l mudari does that apply to? When the fi'l mudari is sound in ending. For example, lamma yadkhul. So dakhala yadkhulu. We can see the sukoon. What else is a sign? Hadful akhir. Removing the ending of the word. And that applies when the fi'l mudari is mu'tal al-akhir. It contains any of the harf illa, alif, waw, or ya. What would happen? The ending of that word will drop off. So it's da'a yad'u. He one man should call or must call liyad'u. Instead of saying liyad'u, the waw has been dropped off. So notice here there's no sukoon. Liyaqdi. Normally it's qada yaqdi, but because of the lamul amr, the ya has what? Been dropped off to show that it's in the state of jazm. And liyas'a is sa'a yas'a, the alif has dropped off. So hadful akhir, removal of the ending, is a sign of the fi'l mudari being in the state of jazm. Also hadful noon. So for example, lam yaqturu. So yaqturuna normally it is. Okay. So lam yaqturu. So the removal of the noon is a sign, hadful noon, okay, is a sign of jazm as well. So we have covered now alamatul i'rab. We will cover the full breakdown of fi'l mudari, which type of fi'l mudari in which state will have which sign of i'rab, like we did for ism mu'rab. But up until now, is everything clear? We've done mabni, we've done mu'rab, we've done the grammatical stage for fi'l mudari. Remember, there's no jar, so still that mistake is still there. Okay, and we've done wajhul i'rab, and we've gone through the signs. Okay, so let's go now to how to determine the i'rab of fi'l mudari. Okay, how do we determine the i'rab of fi'l mudari? So first is, if the al-fi'l mudari is as-sahih al-akhir, it's sound in the ending. In the rough state, what would happen? We would have either two signs, dhamma or thubut nun al-i'rabi, remaining of the nun i'rabi. So let's look at the full cases. So yansuru, tansuru, tansuru, ansuru, and nansuru. In these five cases, the fi'l mudari, the sign of being in the state of raf will be the dhamma. And in these cases, yansurani, tansurani, yansuruna, tansuruna, tansurina, and tansurani, the noon remaining in these cases will be the sign of the fi'l mudari being in the rough state. But this is when it's the fi'l mudari is sound in the ending. There's no harf illa at the end, ra. Okay? In the nasb state, what would happen to a fi'l mudari which is sahihul akhir? It does not contain harf illa at the end. So there's two signs, fatha and hadfun noon. So the same sighas that we gave a dhamma to, those sighas will have a fatha. So lan yansura, lan tansura, lan tansura, lan ansura, and lan nansura. And the cases where there was noon i'rabi, all of them will drop off. So lan yansura, lan tansura, lan yansuru, lan tansuru, lan tansuri. So you, one woman, definitely will not help. And lan tansura, you two women will not help. And in the jazm state, if it's fi'l mudari as-sahih al-akhir, okay, there's two signs, as-sukun and hasfun nun al-i'rabi. For which cases will be sukun? The same five we mentioned before. So lam yansur, lam tansur, lam tansur, lam ansur, lam nansur. And the other cases, the nun i'rabi will drop off. So lam yansura, lam tansura, lam yansuru, lam tansuru, lam tansuri, lam tansura. Next, if the fi'l mudari is mu'tal al-akhir al-alifi. Al-alifi means, al-alifiyu means that it has harf illa at the end, but it's an alif. So it'll be assumed. So for example, yakhsha, takhsha, takhsha, akhsha, nakhsha. In all this, the dhamma will be assumed. Okay? And the nun i'rabi will remain. Yakhshayani, takhshayani, yakhshawna, takhshawna. And obviously this will, it's not tansurina, okay, it'll be takhshina and takhshayani. So there's a bit of a mistake there. It'll be fatha assumed as well in the same cases. So if you put lan before it, it'll be lan yakhsha, lan takhsha, lan takhsha, lan akhsha, lan nakhsha. So the fatha will be assumed. And then obviously if it contains nun i'rabi, the nun i'rabi will drop off. Now in the jazm state, what happens is the harf illa will be omitted. So lam yakhsha, lam takhsha, lam takhsha, lam akhsha, lam nakhsha. I'm not going into the translation of all these because the purpose here is i'rab, not going through the whole translation. But you know, khashiya yakhsha, which means to fear. Okay, and the sighas where it has nun i'rabi, they will drop off. So lam yakhshaya all the way to lam takhshaya. Okay, I think this one will be takhshayna, takhshona, takhshayna, takhshayani. So I think I must have said takhshina, it'll be takhshayna, because it was takhshayina, taf'alina. Okay, so I do apologize for that one. If it's al-fi'l al-mudari'u al-mu'tal al-akhir al-wawiyu, then the dhamma will be assumed and the nun i'rabi shall remain. That's a sign of the fi'l mudari being in the state of raf. So yad'u, tad'u, tad'u, ad'u, and nad'u. The dhamma will be assumed, and those sighas where it's got nun i'rabi, the nun shall remain. So we can see it's got harf illa waw at the end here. And if it's got in the state of nasb, it'll be fatha. So lan yad'uwa, lan tad'uwa, lan tad'uwa, lan ad'uwa, lan nad'uwa. And the fi'l mudari where it's got nun i'rabi, the nun i'rabi will drop off. Okay, lan yad'uwa, lan tad'uwa, lan yad'u, lan tad'u, lan tad'i, lan tad'uwa. And then in the state of jazm, the harf illa will be dropped off. Okay, so it'll become lam yad'u. We got rid of the waw. Okay, lam tad'u, lam tad'u, lam ad'u, lam nad'u. Okay, and in the state of jazm, if he has nun i'rabi, that will also drop off. So lam yad'uwa, lam tad'uwa, lam yad'u, a bit like the fa'il mudari mansoob state, but the only difference is here we've got nasib and here we've got jazim. What happens if the fa'il mudari is mu'tal al-akhir al-ya'i? It contains harf illa ya at the end. Then in the rough state, dhamma will be assumed. And if it contains harf nun i'rabi, then the nun i'rabi shall remain. For example, rama yarmi. So yarmi, tarmi, tarmi, armi, and narmi. Okay. Yarmiyani, tarmiyani, yarmuna, tarmuna, tarmina, tarmiyani. You can see here, okay, that the nun has remained. And it will be, the sign will be fatha, okay, in the state of nasb. So there's nothing assumed here, not like lan yakhsha. Okay, so the fatha will be apparent. Lan yarmiya, lan tarmiya, lan tarmiya, lan armiya, lan narmiya. And if it contains nun i'rabi, the nun i'rabi will drop off. Lan yarmiya, lan tarmiya, lan yarmu, lan tarmu, lan tarmiya, lan tarmi. Lan tarmi, sorry, the noon has dropped off there, okay? Because it's normally tarmina. You woman will definitely not do, okay? And lan tarmiya. So notice here, if you put lan before tarmi, tarmi meaning you definitely will not throw. One man is lan tarmiya, and if it's you, one woman definitely will not throw. It will lan tarmi, okay? So remember that there's a difference there, okay? And if it contains harfa illa ya at the end, and the ya will drop off in the state of jazm. So lam yarmi, lam tarmi, lam tarmi, lam armi, and lam narmi. Notice here that the ya harful illa has been omitted, and if it contains nun i'rabi, the nun i'rabi will drop off. Okay. Inshallah, next lesson we will start the practice of the i'rab of fa'il mudari. So we will be practicing the i'rab of fa'il mudari, and we'll have a thorough practice inshallah next lesson, and that will give us a good understanding of the i'rab of fa'il mudari. After that, we will move straight onto the chapters of the Quran, and on the verses of the Quran we will apply the same cycle of diacritical analysis of fa'il ism mu'rab and fa'il mudari, inshallah. Okay, and if there are any questions, inshallah, use the Telegram support group to ask those questions. Your questions are coming in thick and fast. Alhamdulillah, I'm trying my best to keep up with them, and I do try to respond straight away. But keep those questions coming. Okay, don't think I'm avoiding answering them. I will try my best to answer them. And if I don't know, inshallah, I'll ask someone or I'll check up. And like today, you asked about lamun nahi. I will check that up and inshallah I'll let you know in due course. Okay. For now, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.